Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about dragons, my absolute favorite fantasy creature. I mean, it sometimes switches between first and second place with werewolves, but I absolutely love dragons. So we're going to kind of talk about the way in which I categorize the dragons. I think these are the primary categories of dragons, and the numerous variations of dragons all fall up under one of these four categories. So I kind of want to talk about each type and some of their primary characteristics. But if you want a part two to this video where we get really into the nitty gritty and talk about those subspecies and stuff, let me know about that in the comments down below. So as always, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And if you'd like to support the channel in another way, you can check out the Patreon. The link is in the description. So with that being said, let's begin. So, dragons. Favorite creature ever. So after I saw that comment suggesting that I make this video, I jumped online and found this book because originally I was just doing some research and then I ran into this. It's Dragonology. It is like a fictitious study book, as if like a wizard or a group of people went around the world and studied various dragons. And I thought it was brilliant. I love it. I am so happy that it's going to be on my shelf now. It's like one of my favorite random books that I have now. It's so cool. I'm so excited that I have this. And it kind of categorizes the different dragons in the way that I do, but it kind of just leans into like the Western versus the Eastern, and then it drops everything else as a subcategory of those types. But I see it in four different categories. Those categories are the Western dragon, your classic kind of four legs with two wings dragon, your six-limbed dragon. And after that is the wyverns or wyverns. I like to say wyverns. They are the ones that are more likely to evolve on Earth because most land animals on Earth have four limbs, so they wouldn't have wings and 4 feet. So the wyvern would be more accurate, being similar to birds or chickens or something like that. Well, chickens are birds, but so they have their 2 legs and 2 wings, and their front wings or with their wings are used often as front legs. So that is one that is far more likely to have evolved on Earth, as a dinosaur or something like that, whatever. But the species after that is the Eastern dragon, or known as like the Chinese dragon. They're the ones that are far more serpentine and often have 4 limbs and 2 wings, but they're often categorized by their claws. Some will have 5 claws, some will have four, and some will have three. So they're often identified that way. And the subcategories of this one often leans into things like elemental dragons and divine dragons. So depending on the number of claws they have is often a signifier of their status, their divinity, or even their kingship or aristocratic status, I guess, if that's the right way to say it. So yeah, that's another category. And the least known or least utilized, in my opinion, category, and probably the home to the most nuanced types of dragons, is the worm. The WYRM worm or the Lindy worm category. These are dragons that have no limbs at all. They're far more just straight up snakes or worms. They don't have limbs, and I mean they don't have wings, or they don't have feet. So they're often either, some will just be able to fly inherently if they're like leaning towards the elemental or divine type of dragon, and others are more just like something like the original Hydra, which is just a snake with 9 heads. So it's something more like that. Those are where you kind of get into the category where you could actually have a debate whether or not these things should be considered to be dragons. I consider them all to be dragons because what else are they? Just monsters, I guess. I don't know. But so yeah, let's talk about the Western dragons first. So the Western dragon, at least here in America, of course, is like the most popular design and style of dragon because it's mostly associated with like medieval England. So it's like the classic dragon, the one that lives in a cave and hoards jewels and gold and things, and often has to be slayed by a knight. They often cause major issues and stuff for the village people and all that, all those cliches. What was that one movie which Sean Connery talked for the dragon, and it had like pretty abysmal CGI? Dragon Age? No, that's a game. Dragon something. I don't know. There's a movie that's like pretty infamous, but it's kind of launched itself into cult status in recent years. There's a movie basically like that kind of dragon. In that movie, the dragon is intelligent, but he's also seen as one of those dragons that they often will ask a knight to slay. So it turns into this thing where the knight realizes that the dragon's intelligent, and they start running scams where they pretend to slay the dragon in every town and then collect the money and stuff. So that has always kind of stuck in my head, like as one of the primary types, because I associate them primarily, of course, with the breathing fire, because these types often just breathe fire. They're not. Some will like launch into like elemental and become like ice breathers or poison spitters or something like that. But more often than not, they're fire breathers. And a lot of the times they're hoarders. So I really like this idea of that type of dragon being intelligent while also just having this base instinct that is just its primary drive. Yes, even the Dragonology book kind of speaks on it. The Western dragon, you can see there. We get an ice dragon, a frost dragon. So even these types often have it. Even though this part is talking about Western dragons, they can't help but jump into the other subcategories. Because this, of course, is a reference book talking about all the different types and the nuances of the dragons. But we're covering the broad strokes, talking about the main four categories. So, the next one I want to talk about is the wyvern. So wyverns are the types of dragons that are from like Game of Thrones or like Smaug from The Hobbit. He is a wyvern, and Smaug in particular is an interesting example because he has a lot of characteristics of the classic Western dragon while being a wyvern. But there is a lot of crossover between the types. It's often just kind of a difference in intelligence, really. It seems that the Western dragons, the six-limbed dragons, often will be like able to talk or be telepathic or something like that. Whereas the wyverns, the ones that just have the wings and the legs, they're often just hyper intelligent beasts. They will oftentimes be used by riders. They're often like depicted as those types of dragons for dragon riders, except for something like How to Train Your Dragon, which is just that series in and of itself just has many, many, many types of dragons that are just unique to its own lore. So I don't even want to go into that. But wyverns are the ones that are more likely to have ever existed on Earth. I mean, I doubt it, but like if they were to evolve, they would have been in the shape of a wyvern because we have similar creatures in birds and things. I mean, we don't see Komodo dragons sprouting wings, so I guess they would, not be exactly the same. Even though I guess a Komodo dragon would technically fall into like the Lindy worm category, because some of those have legs but no wings. But neither here nor there. That's a lot of speculation. We can do that later. Um, but the wyverns are, like I said, they're often just kind of the beast form. There's very few examples I can think of off the top of mind of a very intelligent wyvern, except for something like in Final Fantasy, where I mean I'm not even sure if that's considered a wyvern, even though its design is clearly that. It was like Final Fantasy 14 or something. Actually, no, I think that thing has four limbs and two wings. The thing in the I don't know, yo all might not even get the reference at all, but yeah, I'm sorry, I'm mixing up different references. But again, that just kind of coincide with the idea that I can't really think offhand of any wyverns that are shown to be specifically intelligent or even inherently magical. It seems like the wyvern, actually, I think also the worm too, but the wyvern is very much a type of dragon that is specifically just the beast form, not a whole lot of extra like frills on this dragon type. Actually, let's see what the reference material says. Let's look up wyverns. Where do we have? Are they going to fall under Western dragons? Are they going to fall under Western? They would. Um, Bear with me. This is real time reference research. Hold on. I guess they are just classified under other dragons. So it's only like a little paragraph for wyverns. That's kind of mean. Unlike most other dragons, the wyvern has only two legs. However, being the largest form of dragon, it finds these perfectly sufficient for carrying off its elephant prey, lair, or nest. A rocky crag, or occasionally a circular nest in this area of sand dunes or grass. Dimensions. As an adult, it's roughly 50 feet long, 18 to 20 feet high. Correlation. Muddy brown. Oh, coloration. God, I can't read. Muddy brown to lime green. Forms of attack. Teeth, claws, lashing tail, dropping from great height. Food. Elephants, hippos, rhinos, and other large herbivores. That's an interesting interpretation of wyvern. I actually had not considered any of that. That's a really interesting, fascinating. I love this book. It's just so much to just look into. Ooh, and even this one right here. This style of dragon, though, I would consider to be more Western dragon because it has 4 limbs and 2 wings. But it's an Australian dragon. It's basically a kangaroo reptile. It's like Draconis marsupial. Like that's so cool. Yes, but that's the wyvern. Not much extra information about the wyvern. Even this reference book doesn't have like too much extra information. But our next category is another popular one. It's just as popular as the Western dragon, in my opinion. It is the Eastern dragon or the Chinese dragon. This is a dragon that's often categorized by the fact that it is very serpentine-like, has a very long body, like something like Shenron or pretty much any classic Chinese dragon. It has a mane often, and it is categorized by its number of claws. Like often, some will have 5 claws or 4 or 3, and those numbers will depict its level of royalty or its importance. Yes, we have a full area in the book of Eastern dragons. You see it? Can you see? I like that it has like you see the iridescent shining for the egg. Like it's even got a different kind of material. Where is it? I can't see. Oh yeah, it feels like scales and stuff. It's really cool. I really like this book. But of course, this dragon is often shown to have like kind of antlers instead of like regular horns, and they often have a mane. Like they have very interesting features. And they often have very long whiskers as well, and they are often, of course, associated with divinity. There's a lot of kind of religious iconography and ideas tied around the Eastern dragon, especially in the East. And they're most often associated with water. Like they tend to live in water or be around water or be considered water deities and things. The Eastern dragon actually has multiple subcategories because the Eastern region is a large region. There's like Japanese dragon, Chinese dragon, Tibetan dragon, and like all this kind of stuff. And they all have very small like different differences and nuances that like specify them to those different cultures, which I think is really cool. So under that category though, I would honestly like put things like the phoenix, which is a feathered dragon that is like associated with Mexico. Like it's also similar to the wyvern in that it just has like 2 limbs, but it has no legs. So this is a clear like cross between like a wyvern and a lindy worm. So that's kind of interesting too. Like so yeah, that I'm going to leave that for a potential part 2 to the video where we get really into the nitty-gritty of those differences. But let's talk about our last category. I've talked about the Eastern dragon, the Western dragon, and the wyvern. So let's talk about the worms. This book classifies them as the lindy worms. So the worms are dragons that essentially have no wings. Some can fly, some can't, but they don't ever have wings. And some will have 2 front legs with no rear legs, and some won't have legs at all. So I find that interesting because that category in and of itself is just varied. There is a direct association with those types of dragons with Eastern dragons because they both have very serpentine bodies, like this guy. He clearly looks a lot like that guy, you know? So, but this is the like a lindy worm as opposed to a Eastern Chinese dragon. So let's see what the book actually says about lindy worms. Even though I consider them just worms, but the lindy worm is a specific type of dragon in and of itself. But they're kind of using it in a kind of categorization way. So let's see what it says. Fleet on foot as well. That's funny. Fleet on foot as a wild pony, the lindy worm is most often seen at a distance, sometimes in pairs, chasing its prey of wild. What? Why can I backtrain camels? But that has to be a region thing. I can't pronounce that. I don't know what that word is at all. Wow. Backtrain camels on the huge empty steppes of the Asian interior. Lair or nest, a shallow scratch or nest in the earth. Oh, so I guess like a dugout, kind of a hole almost. A shallow scratch or nest in the earth out of the wind. Dimensions: an adult is roughly 35 feet long, from 8 to 10 feet tall. Just like I guess belly to back, however you would measure that. And they, where am I? The coloration, usually green, pale orange, or sandy yellow. The forms of attack are often its claws and constriction. So it's very much like a snake. And its food is the 2 humped camels. That's the official word for that subspecies of camel. Bicitrane, I can't read that for the life of me. I need it to be phonetically sounded out. The lindy worm sometimes menaces silks And oh, Silk Cat, I like that. That's almost like incidental world building for a story that's not really in the book. They are often seen to harass silk caravans. Apparently, that's really cool. So I really like the idea of the Lindy Worm. It's to me, it seems a little more like something that could also exist in the modern day. Like there are, anacondas and things like, but they don't have legs. But if they did, they could easily be considered like a Lindy Worm. But it's often it's also the same type of creature that I would consider something like the Hydra, because the Hydra is essentially a giant snake that has 9 heads, and one of the heads is immortal. So it's kind of under that category. And I don't know, dragons are just cool. There's just so much that you can dig into. There's so much you can play with. There's so much you can actually write about while writing a fantasy. And there's a good reason as to why all these are very prevalent in fantasy. So we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Let me know in the comments down below if you all would like a part 2 where we can kind of get more into the nitty gritty of it. And I'll probably talk about the categories and the types in reference to, different types that we've seen in fantasy, at least the books that I've read, and probably just, some worth looking up. Because, like, I know about the ones in Lord of the Rings, even though I haven't actually read Lord of the Rings. So, yeah, we'll kind of talk about that and get into the nitty gritty if you all are interested in the part 2. So, let me know in the comments down below if you're interested in that. So, as always, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and if you want to support the channel in another way, check out the Patreon. Link is in the description. And as always, I will talk to you all next time. Peace.